It's 6 o'clock. All members of the meeting room, all members participating in the meeting are present in the meeting room. The public has the option of attending in person here at Town Hall or via Zoom using the link posted in the meeting agenda. The meeting is being recorded. And we have no remote members tonight. Okay. So we will open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all. Okay, public forum. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak at the public forum, and please start by stating your name and address. Is anyone present in the meeting room who would like to speak at the public forum? Ken.
We only have one set of these, so once you guys look at them, just pass them on down the line. Sure. Ken Weissmantle, 145 Ash Street. Good evening, Water Commissioners. Today I was accompanied by CPC Vice Chairman Eric Sonnet as we were reviewing some of the CPC projects at the Fruit Street complex. Observation: the resident salt sand pile is much, much smaller, but not quite removed yet. Question is, will it ever be relocated? 2, the parking area in the Zone 1 was heavily salted. See the photo. This is similar to what I presented about a month ago. A huge pile of salt. On the way home, the 2 Legacy North salt storage areas are still in place in the open space parcel. I had 2 photos of those two areas. At the Fruit Street properties, a CPC project last year was to survey the parcel dedicated to the affordable housing. Right across Pratt Way is the Zone 1 of the well. When we did the survey to survey the affordable housing parcel, we found the town DPW recently paved Pratt Way, and they paved over the Zone 1 of the well a couple of feet. If we don't know where the Zone 1s are, then how can we protect them? And if the DPW doesn't know where they are, shame on them. Many towns fence Zone 1s or mark them. Sometimes you'll see signs such as you're entering a low salt watershed area in order to get the DPW to understand that should lower the salt or use a different type of way of removing salt from the road. If you travel to Westboro, on the main road from Hopkinton to Westboro, you'll notice on the left, there's a little well building, and then there's a bunch of athletic field. You will see a fence between the athletic field and the Zone 1 well. That's how they protected it, to keep, I'll say, fertilizer from an athletic field out of the Zone 1. You 5, 4 of you tonight, and Brian at home or wherever, are the water commissioners and have the responsibility to provide the residents with clean water. There are federal and state regulations regarding wellhead protection. We have a local water resources protection bylaw. We really need to protect our water wellheads and provide clean water to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No one online?
No, there are 3 people, but no hands.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda unless someone has something that they want to pull out and discuss separately.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now we want to discuss, we have a water supply protection issues that we have discussed and that we've talked to the DPW and that they have given us some results and some changes. So I think that, can we get Ken a copy of that?
It was in the packet. Do you have a copy of that?
Okay.
I'll make a copy.
But do you guys want to give kind of an overview on this one of what we've done?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lance has been looking into this issue, and it's his memo that you received, so he will report on that.
Sure.
So as you mentioned, we took a closer look at some of the concerns that were presented by Mr. Weissman to the last few meetings regarding potential impacts to water quality based on town practices. The first item we took a look at was the resident sand pile, which was just brought up. Some information that was provided to me after this was posted was the composition of that sand pile is actually a 5-to-1 sand-salt mixture that is purchased directly from McIntyre Loam by the DPW and delivered there. So it is a majority sand, but it still has that 1/6 component of salt to it. So even by that estimation, I do believe it is non-conformant technically in its current state per the Zone 2 and Water Resource Protection Overlay District restrictions. So currently, we've asked the DPW to look at more conformant solutions, put together cost estimates in terms of providing something that will prevent washout and erosion controls that is currently happening over there. So currently, they've covered it, they put a tarp on it and some erosion control barriers around it, but that's just a temporary solution. That can't be a long-term fix. So that is being evaluated. Thankfully, it's not a pure sand mixture as we were kind of originally thought it might be. It is majority sand, but still non-conformant, so it's something we're looking to fix. Second item was just the general salt usage within the Zone 1, which was just mentioned. So we taking a look at that, so for those who aren't aware, Zone 1 is typically a 400-foot minimum protective radius that's put around a well. It's usually set aside just for public water supply use. You don't usually even allow public access to a Zone 1. So it is a sensitive area, one that needs to be thought of protectively. However, in this particular case, we're in the unfortunate circumstance we have about 830 feet of roadway going through it, a building, paved area, portion of a field. So it is a little unusual in that regard. However, looking at it and looking at the historic salinity levels, thankfully, our well salinity levels are not, out of line with any other community surrounding us. Actually, I think we're one of the lower communities when we compare data surrounding us. So thankfully, the impacts have not been significant in that regard. And the unfortunate, side effect of us stopping salt use on the roadway result in potentially very unsafe driving conditions to road users. So it's not something we can safely recommend at this time. And the building there is used by town staff currently, so we could have a liability issue there if we weren't providing a safe walkway for our employees. So as much as I'd like to say we're going to stop using all salt within the Zone 1 going forward, it's not something I can safely recommend at this time. However, given the sensitive nature of this district, we do believe some kind of acknowledgement of that is appropriate. So at this time, we recommended that signs be installed along the roadway, just at the edges of the Zone 1 as you're coming in, just something to the effect of entering sensitive groundwater areas. So if people do see something amiss, like if there was spill or garbage happening or something that could be very concerning, the DPW and the town would want to know that right away so it can be dealt with. So that's the only recommendation we have going forward at this time on this issue. The third item we highlighted was the MEPA approval conditions, which identified the removal of those, the building, the paved area, and the field within the Zone 1 for all the reasons I just mentioned. However, like I said before, the building is currently being used by the IT department So we have 4 full-time employees in there, and we have permanent record storage in the basement. So before we'd be able to remove that building, we would have to allocate money to relocate those uses and lease additional space, which currently isn't in the budget. The MIPA approval for that site does not give a specific timeline for conformance, so it's not like we're running up against a specific timeline. So, I understand Mr. Weismantel's concerns in regard to that bumping up against another MIPA request in the future. However, I think because we don't have the funding allocated to move all of those uses at this time, and the potential that us moving forward with MWRA water would effectively eliminate the Zone 1 entirely, and that would make this issue kind of null and void at that time. Another option is, if we were able to relocate those town offices to the center school or school, we could potentially afford removal of those buildings at that time. So no recommended action at this time on that item, but I do acknowledge that we're going to have to deal with it at some point. The fourth item was in regard to equipment storage. So the DPW has been actively working with the DPW, the Facilities Department, the Fire Department have all been working together to clean up that site. They've been removing surplus equipment. We have a couple pictures on there from before and after that I've included about some of the efforts they've made there. So it is sort of an ongoing effort to clean up that site and maintain it. It seems like there has been significant strides made in recent history. I've only been with the town about a month, but the pictures, I think, make that pretty clear. And we're going to continue to sort of monitor that and hopefully improve the site the best we can. In regard to Pine Field, which is currently, some of this parking space is currently being utilized by JB Sawmill to park their trailers. My understanding, I was informed that this has been an ongoing sort of unspoken thing that's been happening for a while. However, we've been in talks with JB Sawmill. They're aware of our intention to redevelop that site and install a cricket field. And that at that time, they would no longer be able to park there, which we're anticipating, maybe as early as fall 2025, but more likely spring 2026. So in short order, those trailers will no longer be able to park there anyway. In regard to Legacy Farms, we weren't able to find any restrictions on any of the associated covenants for that in regard to equipment storage. However, we do agree that the salt storage on those 2 sites that Mr. Weismantel has identified is not conformant with the Water Resource Protection Overlay District's requirements that it be contained, much like the issue we're having with our own salt storage for the resident sand pile. So we have spoken to the developer and informed them that, they need to make sure that that salt coverage, stays covered with the tarp they're using currently, but they'll have to find an alternative next year because it's not an acceptable solution. And that is all I have at this time.
Progress, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Question, if I may.
Yeah.
So that means for this year, we cannot remediate permanently, correct?
What you're referring to?
All the items that you mentioned, these are more mitigation, but not complete elimination.
Yes, it depends on how quickly, like for the resident sand pile, if we're able to find a affordable solution that we can implement quickly, it may be able to fix this year, but I can't make that guarantee at this time.
In that case, do we have a mean to monitor the water quality more frequently and on a regular basis?
So the water department took a test 7 days ago just to check in on this. So I do believe they are keeping tabs on it. And there was really that test did not show any major deviation from our historic levels.
No, that's great to hear. But this is the beginning of the, snow season, and there will be more and more, right? So that's why I'm thinking in the next at least 3 months or so, when we are going to use salt and other potentially because of the safety of the employees, right? And people in the building. Can we make it a practice to monitor that? I don't know, what would make sense, 2 weeks or every 4 weeks? something?
There's a cost associated with that, and I don't know what's reasonable budget-wise for, the expectation to place on the water department. So I'm not sure I can say that they can easily commit to 2 weeks or whatever frequency. I think that's a conversation we should have with the party over at the water department to see what's feasible.
Yeah, thank you. I totally understand and appreciate that. I think if we want to explore that, so this is January mid, almost. So we are talking about maybe 4 tests through the season, right? So how much it costs and how much it'll be altogether. I think that's a reasonable way to kind of mitigate the risk. Otherwise, we don't want to find something, 5 months, 6 months from now, that's going to be more costly to remediate at that time. So if you can check on that and let us know.
I can get that information. I'll take a look at it for you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Just curious, thank you, very helpful. Did the DPW give a time frame on when they would kind of gather the compliance solutions? Going back to the first parts for the resident sand pile?
We did ask them to give us some cost estimates at least by the end of February, so they have some time to do some research on various options available.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to Ken for bringing these issues to our attention so we could get the answers. Let's see, so the signs, putting up the signs to alert people just that it's a sensitive area, is that something that we could fit in the budget this year? I don't think signs are too expensive, because it is a capital expense, not an ongoing expense. So I guess think about that if that's possible. And then the use of salt, because we don't want the IT workers to fall, obviously, I understand that. But sometimes IT workers can work remotely on really snowy days. Is that a possibility so that we can just use sand instead of salt? Because sand would be allowed, correct?
Yes, sand would be allowed.
So think about that. You don't have, obviously, you don't have the answer right now. But, and then is the part where, the IT department, are they on target to be moved to center school at some point? I know it would be a few years. Are they one of the departments that would be moved?
Lane would know more about
Anyone
that.
know?
At this point, they wouldn't be one of the departments that would be moved to center school, but they could backfill space that was vacated here, for example.
Okay, but that's still a few years away. Okay. And then I guess if we could get, I think it would be nice if we could get another update in a couple of months, like any more progress and any more testing that's done. Thanks.
Through the chair, I have one other follow-up. So Lance, post the winter season, is there any other issues that can continue to cause or continue to pose such risk in that area?
I'm not sure what you mean.
After the salts are done, anything else that's stored there or used there that could, continue to put certain risk on water contamination?
I mean, the fact that there's a road that runs through there is a risk in and of itself that is difficult to mitigate. So I think that's your real unfortunate kind of major risk being so close to the Zone 1 is that roadway. And it's not as if we can stop and relocate the roadway cost effectively at this time. So I'm not sure if there's any low-hanging fruit that it represents major risks at that site this time. I know a lot of effort's already been done to minimize the risks over there. So I'm not sure, but I do think, people being aware of the situation, so if they do ever see people dumping or anything in that vicinity, it's definitely something we should all be aware of and concerned about.
That's a good measure. Thank you. Thank you for all the work and research.
I just want to say, you have been in touch with the Legacy Farm Builders, and they said they would do something about their
Elaine's been,
end of it.
Yes, so they will seek a compliance solution for next season,
Okay,
the management company on that.
thank you. Anybody else, any more questions?
No.
Ken? You don't usually do this,
Thank you. I think there's a lot of good progress here. The one thing that I'm concerned about is the IT office building. The first step that you will do in order to do a interbasin transfer request is submit a MEPA request. So you're going to, and as you all know, I'm on the Water Resources Commission, been there almost 10 years. So the Water Resources Commission is going to get the MEPA request as well as everyone else that gets that. The first step is, geez, were they compliant with the last one? So you're asking for another request and you haven't complied with the last one on this well. Now, I'm not going to prejudge, and I probably won't even be allowed to vote on it. I doubt it. But quite frankly, I know the other members pretty well. They're probably not going to be happy campers if you guys get through the staff unscathed. And as Lance knows, the staff can be a very difficult bunch of folks to deal with. So that's the first thing. The other thing is all of our recent requests where we have approved connection to the MWRA, we've insisted that you keep your existing wells that are producing quality water. You have to be really messed up before they get rid of any source, before they want to take water from another basin. So you're probably going to get a condition where you have to keep them as either a backup source or whatever, and all those same things continue on. So you might want to look at that for a sooner project than later. And the other thing I could suggest is for taking the money to take the building out and restore it. That would be an allowable CPC expense. You know, it's $100,000 or whatever probably to take that building away based on other things we've destroyed. It's not the hugest place, and pull up the asphalt and kind of redo it. But that is allowable. CPC can do wellhead protection.
So you're offering.
I'm looking for creative ways to fund things. Don't get me wrong, but you know.
Keep that note, Lance.
Will.
I mean,
Thank you.
it's still,
Thank you, Ken.
still, we need to figure out the 4 employees for IT, right?
Right.
Like, that's our challenge right now.
Yes.
And what bucket of CPC could that come out of? The open space.
Yeah, and while we are on this
Solve there.
topic, through the chair, as we are, beginning to have the Water Advisory Board kind of getting their heads together on these issues, can we, I'm sure this will be on the radar, but can we make sure this is kind of on their radar in their discussion, and we can get their thought leadership on this too, with your help?
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to annual town meeting. We have 4 articles for the annual town meeting. I assume everybody's read them, but we have this one on the proposed warrant article for the home rule petition economic development revenue account. So anyone have any comments?
Should we take them one at a time? Do you want to start with the center school lease? So this has been recommended by the attorney, our attorney, the language.
No, this is some draft language that I prepared based on previous articles that we've had to lease town property,
Okay.
but we'll go to town council for review.
Okay, so this would just be to put the placeholder on? Okay.
So the intent is to, for those listening, the intent is to lease a portion of the former center school property to a nonprofit arts and/or community organization, a portion of the building.
Anyone else? Sorry, I didn't.
Do we have the printout?
Well, the first one is the center school lease.
Oh, okay. Let me-
And I think the big thing was we can't really move forward with the public-private partnership unless we do this.
That's correct.
So that's,
Facilitates what the permanent building committee has talked about.
Okay. And acceptance of reports, we haven't got all our reports yet, so we'll do that at town meeting. And set salaries for elected officials. Any questions on any of those?
What about the economic development special revenue account?
so
I'm so sorry, I don't have the copies. Do you have any copies of this?
This,
Yeah.
well, you can have that one for now, I can get another one.
Thanks.
I guess I was hoping if maybe the town manager could explain a little bit how this would work.
So this is what we had discussed in the fall when we had talked about adopting the meals tax, that this would direct the revenue into an economic development special revenue account. So it requires legislative action in order to do that, so it's a home rule petition to allow that to happen. And this particular petition was modeled on the one approved for the town of Ashland in 2020. And so it includes dedicating the funds and indicates how they should be spent in a general way, and then how the town could stop doing this if it desired to.
Okay. And since it would take the legislative action, which could take a year or so, what would happen in the meantime because we are starting to collect money already, right?
In the meantime, it just goes into the general fund.
To the general fund, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and on that note, I had a good meeting with the chambers. Both Elaine and I joined, and we discussed about, the overarching economic development approach that we've been discussing with the advisory and with the excise tax and forming the economic or expanding the economic development office and all those. And there's tremendous support and interest for those. So I don't want to take too much time today, but in one of the upcoming sessions, we probably want to elaborate on how this excise tax is going to start building that fund and how we are going to use that fund, how we are going to strategize around the Economic Development Office with this advisory board and with chambers and with all the representation from the town, and make it, more collaborative effort, more transparent, and use of the fund as well. And the big part would be to build this, Economic Development Office with more strength and more funding and resource help to that. So these are all, I think, lining up well with the time and with the warrants that we are lining up as well. But in one of the upcoming sessions, I'm hoping, before the town meeting, maybe in February, we can have a little more elaborate discussion on those.
Yeah, completely fair. And I think the importance tonight was, this is our last meeting before the article closes, so to get it on the agenda, and then we have, however many meetings until, the end of May, so we can fine tune this, tweak it. I believe in April, we'll get our first, deposit from the DOR, which will give us our expectation for the year, what we can count on for revenue, and then we can get really granular with, hey, this is how we're going to use it, this is the plan. We can tweak things, and we can come to town meeting with very likely a slightly amended version of this that's more specific and more transparent.
No, totally.
That's the
agree.
expectation.
Yeah. We want to put it as a placeholder before the time, so. Yep.
Well, that's, coming to that, the annual town meeting warrant closes on February 3rd, so, which is why we are entertaining these tonight, and I will entertain a motion to submit the following articles for the 225 annual town meeting warrant.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now we have a change in quorum.
Or before we leave, were there any other articles that members proposed to submit?
I think I sent two new ones. Is that part of today's discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Given the time, I think we should. So one was related to the PFAS testing for private well owners. And this is going to be, something, again, we have to think through more, but given the time, I wanted to put it out and see if we can have a placeholder for now while we continue the discussion and the research on this, both from our application and legal aspect. And we had brief discussion with Brian, our legal counsel. So the idea is to encourage the private well owners for individual testing, but with the protection of disclosure requirements or legal obligations of remediation. Now, we are not certain if our state provisions will override this and what are the legal implications. But the driver for this, from my end, was that one of the biggest challenge we have is current don't ask, don't tell kind of situation is not very helpful. in terms of assessing where we are at any point in time and how we can move forward with remediation of this. So I think in New Hampshire, they have at a state level such provision, and again, it needs more research, how we are gonna look at it if we want to do it at town level. But the idea is that can we have that provision through a warrant so that residents who wants to test it on their own can test it, but without having the risk of compromising the, mandatory disclosure that currently is in place. And that would encourage for them to do the testing and remediate if they want and can, and with more education across the town on this issue, so we can all understand where things are at more elaborate level. Today we are, in my view, many ways blindsided because no one is, I think, feeling comfortable to test, and we are not also encouraging them to test for the same reason. So that's kind of the essence of this article or this warrant.
Do we have that in writing, or was it in the packet? Distributed. Oh, you distributed it, I see, okay. Sorry.
And Elaine, do you want to talk about Brian's feedback on this?
So there are some legal issues that would have to be looked into. I mean, it's possible for the town to have a bylaw that, or suggestions for people to do something, but we would need to review closely the legal aspects of whether someone can withhold information that they are legally required to disclose by the state or other to start.
And or given the option that even if they disclose, they wouldn't be mandated to remediate right away. Because that's also another fear that drives, not testing enough.
So we obviously don't have that legal opinion right now.
Not full strength of it. I think Brian's initially was we could do something, but we'll need to look at the legal aspects of things and how much and how far we can do this. So I think if we want to put it as a placeholder pending more research and legal opinions, that might be my recommendation. And then we can always take it out if we find any major legal roadblock down the road.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have it, but if we have to pull this off because we get a legal response that says, we could be liable, then we'll pull it off ahead of town meeting.
Yeah, we can do that. Would you read the rationale
Sure.
for me? Because that is kind of a nutshell.
Yeah, sure. So the warrant aims to empower residents with knowledge about their water quality without imposing additional burdens. By promoting voluntary testing and maintaining confidentiality, the town respects individual property rights while fostering public health awareness. Providing access to resources and support ensures that residents can make informed decisions regarding their water safety, which they are afraid to do today. It's, again, kind of blindsided today. And the considerations, of course, that we need to do is have more legal review and ensure that the warrant's provisions align with Massachusetts state laws and regulations concerning environmental health and property transactions. Public awareness and campaign, we need to develop a comprehensive outreach program to inform residents about the importance of PFAS testing and the availability of resources, similar to, again, New Hampshire's initiatives. And then monitoring and evaluation, establish a mechanism to assess the uptake of voluntary testing and the effectiveness of the support provided, allowing for adjustments to the program as needed. And I think by adopting this warrant, Hopkinton could proactively address potential PFAS contamination, safeguarding the health of our residents while respecting their autonomy and property rights.
So I think, I don't mind us putting it as a placeholder to think about it, but I'm not comfortable at all with the no mandatory disclosure. I just can't imagine, if I test, I have an old house, and if it has lead paint and I test it, I have to disclose that to future buyers. And I don't think we should let people test their water for PFAS and not disclose it to future buyers of the land. Like, that seems really wrong to me. So anyway, but I'm okay with putting on a placeholder and thinking about it.
Well, I think that there is a lot to this that still needs to be discussed, talked about, and worked out between now and town meeting. But for tonight, do we want to add it to the articles for town meeting? To hold the space?
I'm
Or
comfortable.
not? I mean, I have to,
No, I'm
I'll
comfortable as-
entertain
I think we're all
a motion.
comfortable as a placeholder, but there's a lot more that needs to be done before town meeting. I
Right.
think that's what everyone kind of was in agreement on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of questions here.
absolutely.
And it would be ideal if it could be paired with some kind of grant solution or 0% interest loan for people to fix the situation in an economical way. But I don't think we have that right now, but maybe something exists.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's more to do and explore. This is more to, stir up the conversation, and then because of the time constraint, we, of course, couldn't do the full length of research. And one thing is to weigh in is that, is it better that we know nothing, see no evil, and hear no evil, and we're fine? That's the question to ask. Or do we want to know and do as much as we can, even if not full remediation right now? But we at least know where we are. And then individuals decide how much, they can remediate and how much they can disclose. The reason being, I want full disclosure as well at some point. But if that full disclosure kind of prevents from knowing, then that's I think, bigger risk and compromise. But I appreciate that. I think if we want to put a placeholder, I'm perfectly fine with that. That's what I wanted to do, actually. I'm not fully, sure what the legal implications and the full implementation looks like. So that would be a good idea, I think.
I will entertain a motion as a separate article, and to add the following article to the annual town meeting warrant. And the article is for voluntary PFAS testing for private well owners.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, any other articles to be added?
The other articles, I would look for Elaine's guidance a little bit. It was related, again, to the economic development. I wanted to kind of explore the economic development advisory that we are talking about. We'll talk about it in another time, another session.
It's here.
But we have a time constraint. So that's why I was wondering, do we want to put a placeholder for formation of that and formation of the funding? And again, I think Elaine gave some good insights that there are few options to do that. Given those options, I would like to hear her guidance. If you want to tell us, that based on that, we can decide, do we need this additional one to strengthen the effort and work on this, or do we not?
So for so there were three proposed articles related to economic development. And one of them proposed creating an economic development fund, which is the same thing which we have for special legislation. So the only way to create a special revenue fund is through the legislature. So town meeting would only need one of those articles. We already voted to submit one, but we can meld the concepts together.
So we can pull that out. That already is covered by the one, yeah,
The home
earlier.
rule petition should cover that, right? Everything. Yeah.
So we're saying both would be covered in what we're,
The fund would not, the special article on the fund would not be needed.
Yeah.
Just number.
This is covered in the earlier one that we were discussing, and I wasn't sure about that, so I added it. But that covers it, good.
And then one of the suggestions was to create an economic development advisory board. So town meeting can create boards and committees, but it has to do it by a bylaw. So similar to what we did a couple of years ago with the Commission on Disability, a bylaw could be proposed that would create a board in that way. But the board can also create boards and committees through the administrative order process, like we recently did with the Trails Committee, or the way it did recently with the Water and Sewer Advisory Board. So it doesn't need to go to town meeting to create a board or committee, but you can. The difference is, a town meeting, a bylaw adopted, at town meeting is very inflexible. The only way to change that in the future is to go back to town meeting. If you want some more flexibility, you may want to set it up in a different process.
Right.
Well, maybe we should put a placeholder in it for now, because Shelley Dole's brought it up several times, and we've not gotten to it. So maybe this would push us, if we could just set it up on our own without the town meeting, but we haven't, so.
And then if you did, then staff could draft a bylaw for your review.
And we could even just decide to do it, at a meeting, right? Create a committee? Okay.
So you're saying put the placeholder in, and then we theoretically could do this before town meeting?
Yeah, because I
Which-
think putting the placeholder would prompt us to actually take action.
I mean, I've been supportive of this as well, and I'd much rather see it go through us than through town meeting and do the
Think
bylaw thing.
That would be simpler,
So
yeah.
If you feel like we need the bylaw to get moving in the placeholder, that's fine. But I'm very supportive to push this over the next, month or two to get it done.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that, and I know we talked about that. What I would suggest is we can, again, keep a placeholder, and then in the next couple of months, if we want to, push it from this end, then we can also take that one out. And the other thing I wanted to understand, actually, for my education as well, Elaine, we want it to be, a bold move and full-blown, full-force strategy of our town. What is the difference? Is it more powerful if we add it as a bylaw in terms of not only a mandate, but also a kind of policy and strategic move? If so, that's one of the reasons also I thought that, it will be a bold statement and more educational and awareness-wise part of the story. And the other thing is, it'll be kind of more grounded as part of our overall town's legal framework. But I'm not a full expert on this, so I would like to hear.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. If you adopted a bylaw to create a committee, I mean, even then, it wouldn't have any more authority necessarily. I mean, you could give it authority to do various things. I'm not sure what kind of authority you'd have in mind. It's called an advisory board, so it implies that there isn't authority, it's just advisory. So it wouldn't make a difference in that regard.
And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is the lack of flexibility we'd have if it went that route, whereas if we adopted as our board, if in a year we're like, hey, we can kind of shift the focus or something, or 2 years from now, we have the flexibility to do that instead of waiting to what you said. We'd have to go back to town meeting, amend the bylaw, make a change, So Again, I'm very supportive of the placeholder, get it moving. I don't like the idea of this going through town meeting. I think we can get this done before then, through the board.
Yeah, I think that would be the better solution, but I'm fine with trying a placeholder for now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and again, I'm also weighing in both, and because of the time constraint, I thought I'd put it in for now, and by the time we decide, I think it's easier to pull off later, right? We can't add. So for that reason, I would put it as a placeholder, if that's okay, and then we can revisit.
I think you have the support for that.
No, thanks.
So I think you can do a motion for both of your things.
Oh,
What about the second one, the creation of the office? But the creation of an Office of Economic Development requires funding, really. So I didn't know if that was premature and we should wait till the next year after we're receiving some income?
that's a good question. My understanding was since we are already collecting it beginning of the year, we'd have substantial budget support to farm it, almost immediately.
Well, if it's
Is that
not,
right?
if a position is not in the budget, we can't hire the person,
We have no budget.
right? Like if it's not at the budget passed at town meeting this year, we can't hire someone anyway.
So again, this is a good discussion to have. So what would happen, the funding that we are going to accumulate from, say, January 1 through the year? Are we not allowed to use it? Because it'll be projected 100, 150 almost, right?
It goes into the general fund until there's legislation that's approved by the governor that it will go into a separate fund. So it would have to wait until.
Thank you for that. But if we do the town warrant and it passes, can we do it before that? Because then the town's legal framework would help.
We have to wait for the legislature to approve the fund.
Okay, so this will only, sorry, then where is this going to be spent from the general fund?
So right now, it's worded, I think in the draft that I had prepared, that if, it references FY '26. So it's this next fiscal year, starting in July. So if, say, there was approved in, say, December, could start putting money into that fund at that time.
And this year's money would go into that fund?
So the current fiscal year we're in now, the FY '25, it would go into the general fund.
I
That
see.
fiscal year ends the end of June.
Right, but wouldn't that contradict our intent and formation a little bit? We want it to be spent for economic development, but in year one, we're going to use it for something else.
We don't have
Because
to
we're not
spend it.
able to divert those funds until there's legislative approval to do so.
Funds to the legislators.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to protect that fund for the intention. So I, look for suggestions how we can do that. Is it something we set aside, or is it something we already included? Maybe we discuss it in our budget session. I'm totally fine with that too. But for that reason, if, again, we can keep a placeholder, just because our discussion is not complete yet, until we fully flesh that out and see how it's gonna, work. I just want to take the opportunity of the momentum of the, exercise and all the discussions and all that we have, and see how much we can progress on forming some of these, even though they may be executed later or they may be in action later, because these things take time. That's just my opinion, and open for discussion and suggestions.
And regarding the creation of an office by town meeting, so town meeting can create a department, but it would have to also be by bylaw. But town meeting does not appear by charter to have the authority to establish positions and duties. And also the charter indicates that town meeting cannot take duties that are performed by another department and give them to another. So right now, we do have an employee who is performing some economic development work. And so my concern is that, as drafted, it takes work from one department and gives it to another.
I see,
And I'm not sure, and town meeting, I don't think has the ability to do that.
to do that. But it would be next year, so you'll have enough time to plan it out, to accommodate however you feel operationally it can work out. Is that right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Because even if this passes, I heard that it won't be effective until next year. So that means you have time by next year to allocate and analyze the budget allocation, plan it out, and then also plan out the operational framework in terms of town departments, roles and responsibilities.
But I think if this article to create an Office of Economic Development goes forward, it has to be a bylaw that's written that talks about creating this office, what's its position in the structure of town government, how it's going to work. But it can't talk about positions, because I don't think town meeting has the ability to do that.
No, that's great feedback. So let's take out the positions part of it, but maybe the formation of the office part we can keep. And then in the meantime, we're going to have the economic development more discussion. And if that discussion leads to a more structured form, we can again, pull it out, or B, we can keep it there and give you the authority to elaborate and structure it in the next years. But at least we have it, so we now are committed to the formation of it in some shape or form. That's the kind of intent.
We may also want to think about how we organize town departments and whether it's more streamlined to have this function in another existing department today. So those are some things to talk about, rather than creating a new bureaucracy, ways to perhaps streamline that.
No, thank you for the feedback. My thinking is, I appreciate all that. Why don't we do this? Keep it as a placeholder, and when we discuss this, if you want to bring in a proposal, how you see it kind of getting into the execution from your town overall office structure, role perspective, we can discuss that. And if that makes it, go away, it will go away. That's how again, these are all, because of this length of time that we have and not sufficient discussions, I wanted to put it as a placeholder so we have a resolution of it in one way or the other. And if not, we formalize it, at least to keep it on our radar as a commitment for future.
Just voted on that, right? So it is a placeholder now,
Okay,
okay?
that's good.
All right,
I think the
next.
board has voted on.
No, we haven't voted on this.
Mary, we need a motion for all of his proposed. So going back to, because we didn't do the voluntary, we did that one, right?
We did that already, the economic development.
We need a new motion here.
Yeah. So the motion I would propose is for the
Establish.
advisory and Office of the Economic Development. That's the placeholder we can keep if you are
Okay, to
all.
establish an Economic Development Advisory Board.
And creation of an Office of Economic Development. And we'll craft the,
Without the staffing section.
without the staffing section. Thank you. Yep.
Economic Development, okay.
So how do I articulate it?
No, okay, it's, to establish the Economic Development Advisory Board,
And an Office of Economic Development?
Okay.
and the creation of an office for economic development. It's a little weird, but okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to say aye, but I'm a little reluctant on the second one because I'm not sure this is the right method to do it. I understand the intent is good and what we want, but,
It'll give us time to dig into these.
okay,
I agree with you.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Changing the quorum requirement for the Water and Sewer Advisory Board. The quorum of the board shall be, and this is the change, a majority of the number of the appointed members. It's a majority. And it used to say for 3 members, regardless of the number of members appointed, so that we're taking that out and adding a majority of the board. All in favor? Can I get a motion?
Well, can we explain? So right now, there are 3 people that we appointed, but only 2 have been sworn in. Is that correct?
Yes, if you recall from the last meeting, we've only been able to swear in 2 of the members so far. One has been working remotely out of country, but however, happily to say that that remaining board member should be sworn as of tomorrow, which
Okay.
may make this article pointless, but that has not happened yet. So that's why it's still on the agenda for the time being, in case there's an issue potentially that can get moored. For the time being, I have forwarded the available MWRA and PFAS information we have to those members, just inform them not to, I guess technically it's not an open meeting violation because we don't have a quorum, but there is no formal discussion going on until we can get that official quorum in
So
place.
if there were only 3 members, the quorum would be 2, and then all votes would have to be a vote of 2, right? Unanimous.
Right, theoretically, if there's only 2 members, they would still be able to open and convene the meeting, and it would be a majority. So that 3rd member would not be able to participate on any voting up until he is sworn in, which may be tomorrow, but it has not happened yet, so I cannot guarantee it.
I'm really on the fence on this. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I thought it was good before, but.
What's your recommendation?
We have not had any additional applicants for the board, so filling out the full 5 seems to be difficult. So it'd be nice to facilitate this and get this group going.
Okay.
Okay, anybody want to second the motion?
Well, I think we need someone to make the motion. So, all right, so I move to amend the charge of the Water and Sewer Advisory Board to change the quorum section to read, "A quorum of the board shall be a majority of the number of appointed members."
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, not my favorite. The update and regulations for poles, wires, antennas, location of a petition. I have read it all. And it has the one section that I love, and that's no double poles. And I'm just wondering how we can somehow enforce that, because we haven't been able to so far.
Well, that's an existing provision.
Can we have Elaine walk us through this one with the background? Do you mind?
Yeah, sure. So within the last couple of months, we realized that a couple of provisions of this were out of compliance with the law. And that is that the town is required to send out the abutter notices for the applicant. We had for years requested that they do that, but now it's the town's responsibility. So we're taking on that responsibility. They do have to provide an abutters list for us to use, and we have increased the fee to cover the town's costs in this regard.
So the currently is 50 and now it's going to be 150?
Correct.
Okay, and that will cover your postage and?
Yes.
Okay. That sounds fine to me. It's just a small change.
I was just double checking. I'm good.
Yeah, Mr. Corinne? Do you want,
Yeah, sure. I move to modify the board's regulations for pole, wire, and antenna location petitions as proposed.
second?
Well, yeah, again, I want to know how we can enforce the prohibition of double poles. Because we've tried and tried for years, and they come in at night and put them up and then cut off the old pole at the bottom. And we have had a prohibition against double poles for a long time, and they ignore us. And we have it again here. Is there any way?
Well, one thing the board has done in the past and continues to do is when it approves a new pole, it requires the old pole to be removed within a certain period of time.
And Elaine, on that note, have we done any compliance review or given any warning or anything when they're out of compliance or did not follow the rules as we heard?
Yeah, I think they do know that the town is concerned about this, and so we do monitor it in general, and the number has been decreasing over time. But we have a lot on Main Street that are going to be removed
Yeah.
pretty soon.
Well, we hope.
One right on the corner of Cedar Street and Main Street.
There's
They were told at our meeting they weren't to double pole it, and we come in the next day and it's double pole. And the bottom's cut off for the old pole, so we can't do anything about it. Do it all the time. The other thing here is that the petition of the application fee is $150 for application and $250 for a pole structure and petition. So not $50, it's $150. I just want everybody
That's
to...
the change, yeah.
Okay,
We do have a motion in a second.
we have a motion and a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I want to thank Lance for his work on this as well.
Thank you, Lance.
Happy to.
Now we have to enforce.
Yeah. Look at that.
We have our marijuana testing facility. How is that coming? How are we doing on the agreement?
So we have no changes to the number of laboratories, testing laboratories that we have. One thing that did change is the law changed where the Cannabis Control Commission created a model host community agreement that all communities are required to use now. So the change brings us into compliance by referencing that model instead of what we had before as the town's preferred option.
And that's the only change from our original
That's
voting on it?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is another of those policies that were on the back burner until we had an assistant town manager to help out, so this is great.
And these are minimum conditions. We could impose others, is that correct?
It would be a subject to negotiate.
Okay. Okay, and this will bring us into compliance with the law. All right. So I would make a motion to modify the board's marijuana testing laboratories and marijuana research facilities process and host community agreement policy as proposed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adaptive Playground Project. And the Select Board is in a joint meeting with the School Committee and the Community Preservation Committee to discuss the proposed Adaptive Playground Project and associated funding. And Ken's here from the CPC.
I think they can all come join us, right?
Yeah,
can all
they'll
join and-
come up.
Open the meeting.
Seen a lot of you guys lately.
Is that a good
It was like Tuesday night. I mean, was it Thursday night?
Mary Jo, the CPC is not formally meeting today, but as chair, I'm representing
I know,
CPC.
it's okay. Representing the CPC, and we have a number of people representing the school, so.
One, I have a presentation to start off this.
Excuse me?
I have a presentation to make.
Okay.
Start it off.
Okay, Ben has it on, or it's on
We
the,
have presentations.
There we go. Good. How about the next slide? Okay, the focus of the CPC is in four main areas: open space, historic restoration, community housing, and recreation. Of these four areas, we are by law required to take 10% of our annual revenues and put them into those, we call them buckets. The other 60% can be spent in any of these four areas. We derive our funds with 2.5% real estate tax and a state match, which is currently about 18%. The CPC, the Community Preservation Act, was really created to provide a local source of funds for the above items in which times of tight budgets were typically not funded. You know, historic restoration ends up at the bottom of the list when things are tough. And, you know, you might not be able to buy open space, which was been a long priority here, or community housing, or even recreation, kind of sometimes ends up in the nice-to-have percent. We're saying, well, the nice-to-have gets 2%. Our committee consists of representatives of those four main areas, 3 at large, and then a person from the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. So we have I'll say a dedicated advocate for their 10% plus as much as the other 60% of the funds that they can get for their projects. I'd like to give a little history of the Marathon Playground. In FY24, the school department requested $1 million for an additional playground at Marathon School. Oh, the next slide. There we go. We've got $1 million for the additional playground at Marathon School because the school addition created a need for additional playground equipment. That year, CPC turned down the request for two main reasons. One is the EMC playground provides for playground needs for the community right next door. So we thought we would be duplicating what we were providing in the EMC park that year. And we also felt that playgrounds for educational use should be funded by sources of funds available for educational purposes. You know, we in town in Hopkinton put a lot of priority on funding our educational needs. Next slide. The next year, the school department came in for $1 million for an adaptive playground at Marathon School. That was a little different proposal because we don't have an adaptive playground in town, so we looked at that one really hard. We approved $100,000 for the location study and the engineering for the adaptive playground, and this was approved at last annual town meeting. The committee itself expressed our concerns that locating on a school property would limit community access during those times that school is in session, and the cost seemed kind of high compared to other CPA-funded adapted playgrounds. But with those funds, the location was studied, the Marathon School site was selected, equipment was selected, layout was designed, and the budget was established. And now we are where we are today. This year, in the CPC cycle for FY26, next slide, yep, good. Basically $1,200,000+. And at the end of a long, long discussion, CPC recommended funding $300,000 toward the construction of adaptive playground at Marathon School. And that's what our proposal would be to town meeting. And actually, we're going through community, or the capital improvements and appropriations very shortly on the next cycle on their way to annual town meeting. The location concerns drive the CPC decision. Basically, the location at Marathon School limits public access during that time the school is in session, and summer school, which is there, is in session. So that takes off a lot of the time. Positive aspects of the Marathon School location include dual use with school educational use, and the school department will end up taking up the maintenance of the playground in the future. So that's kind of a good thing. Also, the center school location, the former center school location, was not considered because the future of that property is uncertain. I think a lot of our members would love to have it at center school, but I agree that at this point, until we get the funds done for center school, as you might remember the presentation I made a month or so ago about center school, till we really get going on that project, the location's uncertain. I'm not sure we would want to invest there at this point. A couple of years from now, maybe different, but. So at the end of the day, majority members of CPC are comfortable with the location, combined with the CPC contributing the engineering cost, which is $100,000, and a portion of the construction cost, which is $300,000. Next slide. Project cost concerns. It is on the high end of adaptive playgrounds funded by CPC funds. There's about 45 that have been funded. I think 24 in the 100 to 500,000 range. Only 4 are over $1 million, and we would be the third most expensive on the list. The real expensive one on the list was quite a Rolls Royce of playgrounds, and huge. Most of, or I'd say many of the programs have funding sources in addition to CPC funding. So there's usually a school CPA partnership, I'll say, to make it happen. I did provide in the meeting material the spreadsheet that I'm talking about, all the other adaptive playgrounds. And possibility of other grants at the time when they were meeting with CPC hadn't been explored, and perhaps that's another source of funds. And the next slide, please. So our considerations in funding the project. Our revenue is projected to be about $1.7 million this year, which 10% is devoted to recreation, 60% can be used in any of the 4 focus areas. The whole project would be a very large project for CPC. This project competes with the in-process fields like the cricket pitch, which might need additional funds for the safe access to it, and competes with a lot of other projects that are in the planning phase and potential open space. We have our sights set on several nice open space things that would take a good chunk out of the budget if we ended up getting a willing seller. Parks and Rec have got all sorts of plans in process of which we're funding some studies. So we didn't want to commit everything. And just like all the other town departments and the school department, we're making hard decisions on where to spend the money. And so we're making some tough decisions this year. And we still believe that town funding for the portion of the project that benefits public education should be available from public education sources of funds. Next slide, please. So why not just borrow it from the CPA funds? I think that was brought up at your last joint meeting that was discussed. Well, currently our debt and interest includes a yearly payment of $108,000 that was used to fund the high school field lighting. And we're also paying off $32,000 for the Fruit Street concession. So our current debt and interest is about 8% of our yearly revenue. If you remember back to my presentation on Center School, that will require borrowing of about 28%. So we're looking at potentially in another year of having incurred debt and interest costs of 35%. And I know the select board is very concerned about debt and interest costs. We don't want to use up all our ability to fund future projects. And that's what we would be doing if we took this on with a substantial debt increase. In particular, we don't know where we are until we get a little bit further along on the engineering. You know, are those rough estimates of costs from the Permanent Building Committee, you know, spot on, or, you know, is there a little wiggle worm? Who knows what's going on with that. So we don't really want to borrow it. Next slide. Community needs and school needs. Marathon needs an additional playground equipment. Community needs adaptive playground equipment. The community need for adaptive playground equipment could be met without new playground by installing new equipment in an existing playground. Thus, it makes sense, in CPC's opinion, for CPA funds to be used for a portion of the project with the school budget funding the rest. Next and last slide. So we recommend the support of the $300,000 for the construction, which is what we feel very comfortable in supporting through the town meeting budgetary cycle. In the last slide, while we have the discussion, leave it up there, there's a kind of a schematic of what was proposed. So that concludes CPC's presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Any comments from you?
Not really. I think the only thing that I want to recognize is an adaptive playground committee did a lot of very hard work to come up with this, and did this over a number of months, and we respect the votes that have been taken by the committees.
Yeah, I like your work product from that committee. You guys did a really good job on a very tight timeline, and, you know, I thought everything was well supported, and I think that majority of the committee, you know, recommends that. And I think that's part of why we're willing to kick in on it. And not insignificantly kick in. I mean, close to 400 grand, so.
I mean, I think a lot of us would like to find a way to make this happen. I understand Ken's limitations here, or for the CPC committee too, but obviously we're all very short on funds this year, and there's a lot of other projects. So I don't know if there will be enough free cash or something to make up for the rest of it, or what we could possibly do creatively if there are other grants. Because I know the dog park was paid for by a portion, I think at least half from a different grant, and the other half was by CPC. But this really seems like a need, and it seems like a great way for it to normalize kids with disabilities playing on the same playground as all the other kids. And being right by EMC Park, you know, everybody could use it on the weekends and after school and in the summer. So it's really a very worthwhile project and well studied. So I wish we could find a way to get this funded eventually, or ideally this year. But
If I may, through the chair, Amy's sentiment, this project was important to the school committee.
as well as it came from its own committee that was not part of the school committee. That it is important for us to see this become a reality in Hopkinton. It fills a significant need. I also, you know, when we started out back, I like that you gave the history, appreciate that. And it ended up with the proposal to be on the school property. It did feel like that fit a nice need of being able to have a collaboration where the schools are able to be stewards of the playground, but also to open up access to the, you know, to the community. But I'm hopeful that we are able to find funding for this in town. I know that there, and Susan can speak better to this, but reasons why you can't just add a couple of pieces of equipment, that it has to do with the surfacing that would make it an adaptive playground. So that is unfortunately would be an ideal thing if it was the type of thing where we could add a couple here and a couple of there. But I'm hopeful that the town will find a way to be able to get us the funding, you know, for the town to make this project reality.
I think that's a good point from Nancy, that it's the surface can't be the wood chips, it has to be a surface that can be accessible, and so that's the biggest cost part of it. So none of our existing playgrounds, I don't think, have that at this point.
It was my understanding too that didn't the committee choose the cheapest option of the different ones presented? So they were very considerate of the cost of the total project and understanding. And we know from the building projects, things cost a lot of money these days.
We appreciate it that you picked the cheapest of the four that were picked, but most communities are in the $500,000 range for, you know, and it's sometimes hard
The
to.
dates on those are.
Well, they're
this year?
over some time. They're over the time. So you
The
get a
last
mess.
2 years in building have been very expensive.
Yeah, there's been, I mean, inflation, we all know that, but it would be a good data point to also see, you know, where the variances are and if there is any opportunities. Sorry, just to interject into that. And I also echo that I think, you know, this is something that we should, I would support definitely to move forward and make it happen, make it a reality sooner rather than later. And I think this is something, you know, we being an equitable town, we want all our children to have access, equal access, and having the most vulnerable, great options such as this, which is well thought out. I think we all want to get our heads together and see how we can make it a reality. And I understand, thanks for putting out various thoughts on this. And I would like to hear, you know, from the school or from the proposal perspective, how and what are the kind of thoughts about the location, about some of the cost and others, if there is any opportunity on any front, that would be a good discussion to have. And then I also want to explore how can we chip in for the money in addition to CPC from other funds, as we have a little bit of healthy free cash, and which comes up in every budget discussion, but can we bank on some of that is a good discussion to have. And I see some of our appropriations chair is here too. If there are anything that we can look at as an option, I don't know, that we might also be able to chip in. And maybe it's a compromise how the CPC and free cash funding comes together to fund it as a whole. And one quick question I had is that is there a rationale on the CPC side for the 300K allocation? Like, how did you come up with that number? If you can help us walk through that.
Part of it was looking at community time versus school time. And, you know, we're roughly doing 400,000 out of, I'll say, $1.2 million, $1.3 million. We felt that was about the time we get the weekends and we get the nights and we get 1 month during the summer. And I think some members looked at what their projects was in their budgets for historic or open space, and those members said, you know, I got stuff that's coming, and, you know, we can't get down to nothing as far as where we're at. It's, I mean,
If it wasn't located at a school, is there more money?
I'm not sure this year there would be more money.
So,
But I think the attitude to the committee would be more our responsibility to fund the playground. You know, because it isn't, at that point, it's not an educational expense.
And it would cost more because you'd need to do, like, because Marathon at least is flat, but needs the surfacing. And when the committee looked at like over 30 locations, Marathon was the most affordable place to install a playground.
I'm not disagreeing that it's not a bad location. You know, I mean, center school is flat too, and in 2 years, we'll know whether center school is available for that backyard. I mean,
So won't we know sooner than that? I mean, we're talking about the lease at town meeting. So in roughly, less than 4 months,
now, I think we're a year away, because we really got to get through the architectural work and to really, fine tune what it's going to cost to tear down the back part and redo all the stuff in the inside. We're not there yet. It'll be a while.
Okay, so, hold on one sec. So I think I echo my, colleagues' sentiments, like, this has to be a priority for the town. My biggest thing is, how do we do this without raising taxes? I like the use of free cash. I think you brought that up first, Amy, right? We need to look at that number. And I think, Shadul, you started alluding to, how can we get CPC to chip in more? I'm not saying 300,000's not a good amount, but is there a way we can, I'm seeing both sides. You both kind of talked about the pros and cons. I'd like to see something, 50-50, ideally CPC funds, free cash. And I think your biggest concern with the Marathon site is the access during school hours, right? And so I understand, like, that to me is obviously a safety thing from the school. Is there any flexibility on that? Is there a way that we can improve that a little bit? I'd like to.
So I think the one thing I would like to say about accessibility is, I know that when you're thinking about the Marathon School, you feel like you might be limiting access to it, but there are over 600 students, 180 days of the year that would have access to that. I think ultimately you're increasing the access to it by opening it up to Marathon kids. And then, of course, the entire community has nights, weekends, afternoons, and that's when our students from Elmwood, Hopkins, would not be in school and would be able to access it. So I really feel like you're expanding the access if you have it adjacent to a school so that kids in the building can use it all day, every day. And I know that what you're asking really is, can we have other people on that property while kids are in school? And the answer to that really has to be no for safety reasons.
just for the record here, what would be the total cost of the entire project?
It's 1.243 million.
Through the chair, can I add a comment regarding? So the cost, I know it's not a small amount. I know the town is going through difficult financial times. I also know that we're going to continue with difficulty, and I'm sensitive as, stewards of the community's facilities, but also as a taxpayer. I think this is a real need in the community. I think that when we look at some of the work the Commission on Disability has been doing in looking at, areas of town where handrails could be improved, where sidewalks need to be improved, that it's access for children is important, and having equal access with their peers to play alongside is huge. It's not something that I think anybody should take lightly, and I appreciate the efforts to try to find the funding from multiple sources to make this happen, because it's in a year or 2 years, the cost is going to be more, but also that's lost time for kids that could be playing on the playground alongside differently abled peers.
We also, I'm sorry. Can I speak? Is that? We also have noted that most of the children that need an adaptive playground are receiving services at the Marathon School starting at age 3. So it's not many children that would be not available that would be available during the school day that would need an adaptive playground in town.
But the point is that it's for everyone, not, right, so everyone, not just the kids that are on IEPs that have.
Obviously, but particularly, they could play at the EMC playground. Other.
As most of my professional career was either as an engineer or a project manager, sometimes you look at it, which I think the committee did, and figured out what they really wanted, and then added up the cost at the end of the day. The other way to approach one of these things is say, hey, we got $750,000 to build this thing. What's the best stuff we can get for that? What can we maybe put off for an addition in another year or two? I mean, that's the other engineering approach. And, you know, I got to ask the question, you know, there are some $750,000 or $500,000 ones that have been done in the last 2 or 3 years on this list. Go look at what they got. Now, maybe they didn't do all the good stuff we would want to do, but, you know, some days, some years, a lot of time, when we were house poor in Hopkinton, you know, we didn't go on a vacation that year too. So it's, you know, I think, you know, you could take another cut at the apple, looking at it from, this is what we can do from a cost standpoint. If, you know, if the $900,000 or so is not available from the town to fund it. We also had, if I remember the presentation correctly, we had a 25% contingency in it. Do we really need 25% on, you know, equipment like this that probably is a catalog price that you could probably buy for this summer type of thing, or is, you know, fairly early. It's not like you're pricing out something for 2 years from now. You know, I mean, there might be some ways to look at ways to sharpen the pencil, I think.
I mean, no matter what, through the chair, no matter what, it's a budget, and you don't know that number until you go to bid.
Yep.
So it's just a budget.
Can I ask from a process standpoint, so the CPC has voted the 300,000. I assume the school committee's put a placeholder article on the warrant. Is that for the rest of it, or?
It did not pass CIC, so
Oh.
there is not an article.
Okay.
Yeah.
That limits the path forward for this year then. We could still apply for other grants, but it's a little late to expect to receive other grants then.
We are looking for.
Oh, you are looking,
We are
okay.
looking.
Okay.
I'm not sure, from what I saw on this list of things, you're going to find $900,000 in another grant. You know, you might make a good chunk, but I don't think you're going to get the rest out of some grant outside of town.
Well,
I mean,
but if it was a nice big portion, that would help.
a big portion would help.
Is there a chance, if we got another grant, if we could go back to CIC and maybe they would be supportive of a smaller amount? Or is CIC done with their review at this time?
I'm going before CIC on Monday, so.
Okay.
And
And
I've got my 300,000 in it. I mean,
yeah, I think Kyla had the answer to that question. CIC meets again. Okay, so if something were to change, they could review it again. So, okay. Yeah.
Through the chair, two thoughts. One is that can we look at it, you know, more collaborative fashion, like what we are doing now. I appreciate all the comments and trying to make it happen. One is that a question for Elaine and Kyla and Mike. How much can we afford from the free cash for this? Can we find a middle ground, free cash, CPC combo, and maybe a little bit of room for grants, if that makes sense? And, you know, come up with a number from all ends and see if we can make that. That's one. And second thought, as I was hearing, for access issue, maybe we can find a creative way to solve it without compromising the safety issue, because it's going to be a handful, as we understand. Maybe we issue special pass with applications that you can accommodate during school hours. I don't know, I'm not an expert in this, safety and your operations-wise, but if it's like 5 or even 15 people, you can make it like a, you know, within this time, you apply, get that approved, get a special pass and ID for that for those kids who can participate during the school hours. That'll solve the access question that CPC or concern that CPC has. And maybe that'll open up a little more of the purse there. So those are the two thoughts I want to put out there.
We will know center school funding next year, well, about this time. You know, we proposed 2 years of studying the construction plus trying to get other grants that are part of that proposal. So maybe this time of year, we won't be quite there, but we will be at least 6 months into the engineering at this point where we might have a better feeling whether we're in trouble or not. We certainly won't have bid documents at that point, and, center schools got some good bones, but it's got a lot of work to do.
Do we know in a perfect world what grant money would be available? I mean, is it 50 grand? Is it 300 grand? Could it be
It's probably less than 50.
less than 50? All right, so the grant that's useless.
Just a small amount.
So the grant, it's a non-issue. So it needs to come from CPC, free cash, or a donor. Nancy, you got some extra money, right?
I think that's the path forward. I think this is really important to get done. I personally would like to see CPC chip in a little bit more. Again, in my mind, it's a 50-50 CPC free cash. I'd love our town manager's perspective on this. I know.
There's a lot of competing requests for free cash, and it's not unlimited.
Yep.
So be part of the budget discussion.
Well, we have a lot to look at. And the next thing up is the comprehensive budget, which might answer some of our questions. Does anybody have anything else they want to add? Can we take it under advisement?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just one closing. So where are we leaving this procedurally for this year? The request for the playground, that is? Are we going to have a town warrant, or we're going to handle it through the budget process?
To the budget.
The warrant closes February 3rd.
February 3rd.
But we are not meeting anymore.
That's correct.
Not before.
Not before, right? So procedurally, this is not going to be included for this upcoming year? I'm just...
Well, it also didn't, as I mentioned, didn't pass CIC as well. That would have to be overcome if someone did submit an article.
Yeah, but
Our next meeting is
meeting can
February 4th.
override the CIC recommendation if they want to. I mean, I always like to have them supporting me, with it, but it wouldn't be the first project that they said no and town funded it in the past.
The schools could still keep it on the warrant as a placeholder, even without CIC approval. Is that what?
Submit it.
What's that?
They could submit the article.
Do we want to put a placeholder again? Yeah, because we don't want to, miss out the year for the logistics issue. Hopefully, we can all come together with a solution and get things going.
Any board or committee can submit an article.
Or citizen.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, folks. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of each other.
You're welcome Thursday.
Huh?
You're welcome Thursday evening.
Thursday evening again, okay. All right, we have Kayla's up next. Is it Kyla? Kayla. Kyla.
When you're ready, Mary Jo, I'll take this one. I'll take this one when you're ready.
Okay, I didn't know whether we was going to say you're on or you're on. Okay.
Do you have slides?
So I'm just referencing the memo that was in the packet, which is the town manager's comprehensive budget transmittal. Want to just go through a few things there. The budget is within the constraints of the 2.5 limit. It complies with the town's financial policies. It incorporates the use of available funds with the estimates we've received to date. It reflects a sensitivity to tax impact, streamlines the provision of some services, and addresses the town's long-term financial stability. But it's not yet balanced. As you know, there's a $1,881,664 gap between anticipated revenues and proposed expenses. The school committee also has not yet voted on a recommended budget, so this one includes the most recent one that we've received. So with regard to the sources of funds or the revenues, the transmittal forecasts revenues that are 8.3% above the budgeted revenue level for FY25. And one notable change in revenue for FY26 is the $4 million that was released from the overlay account to the general fund by the Board of Assessors, which follows the settlement of pending Eversource ATB cases and no new filings by Eversource. And this $4 million has flowed to free cash. And that we expect free cash to be certified soon. So we don't have the final free cash number either at this point. And at this point, we anticipate that state aid will remain flat, and that's the information we've been given to date, but we'll continue to monitor information from the governor and the legislature in this regard. With respect to the uses of funds or the expenses, in October, town departments were requested to provide level service budgets for FY26 and to identify any special circumstances due to regulatory and statutory requirements, community growth, and community needs that aid the most vulnerable. The aggregated budgets resulted in an 11.1% increase and a $3 million roughly budget shortfall. So Kyla LaPierre, CFO, and I then requested that departments reduce the budgets to a maximum 1.3% increase. And this was the bottom line number needed to get to a balanced budget from all departments on the bottom line. So the reductions from non-school town departments totaled $1.73 million, which showed some deep cuts in services and personnel. And in reviewing that, we weren't sure that the community is ready for those types of reductions. So we have recommended a budget that is a 3.34% increase instead on the town side. So the proposed budget for town departments, this is non-school, retains core services and important services, but it's less than level service in some areas. It's $1,013,385 lower than the initial budget request submitted by town departments. The changes to department budget requests can be discussed in greater detail at the upcoming budget review meetings with each department over the next month. I just wanted to note, too, that the largest portion of the town's budget is for public education, but we're one organization with cross-departmental cooperation, services, and work. And without reductions to the education budget or an increase in revenues that get us to a balanced budget, there will be very deep service and personnel cuts on the town side to achieve a balanced budget. It's important to note that the town supports the public education budget too, including providing employee health insurance, workers' compensation insurance, services and benefits for retirees, general insurance, financial management software, payroll services, nursing and vaccination support, water and sewer, and snow plowing. And on the positive side of the budget message this year is that a review of services this past fall and the bottom-up development of town budget services resulted in some streamlined and consolidated services, which I did outline in the memo. And so the proposed budget includes a contribution to our OPEB of $875,012, and which is on track to achieve full funding in the early to mid to 2050s. A contribution of $700,000 to the stabilization fund is proposed to bring that fund close to the target of 5% of operational spending. And in last year's budget transmittal memo, the town manager did warn us of the impending shortfall for this year or for next. So we have some decisions to make over the next couple of months. And I threw in a couple of options for discussion. They include reducing expenditures to match revenues in both town and school budgets. Another option is to supplement budgets with free cash to support one-time expenditures, such as townwide events and the like, which are typically supported in the operating budgets. and reduce expenditures to make up the difference. In other words, a targeted use of free cash to fund specified things. A third option is to supplement budgets with free cash to meet level service needs only, but doing that with a plan to discontinue the practice as soon as possible. And then increasing revenues by a Proposition 2.5 override is always an option, which is subject to a town vote, and it does require an alternate budget should the override fail. So I threw in the idea that we use certified free cash to fund some one-time expenses and community events, which could total up to $500,000 or so, which I did list in my memo. And this is a proposal. It's not in the proposed budget, but it gets us closer to the gap. And it isn't that those items are removed from the budget, but it's just that the targeted use of free cash to fund those items. So the town is fortunate to have a substantial amount of free cash this year, with a significant amount due to the release of the funds from the overlay account and the use of the remaining ARPA funds to pay for health insurance in FY24, but it's not a sustainable or reliable revenue source over time. It will allow us to meet some of our capital project needs without any new borrowing next year. And the tax impact does continue to be an important concern as we consider the challenges of seniors, young families, and others struggling to stay in Hopkinton. And the transmittal includes a cautious recommendation on capital spending, and I concur with the recommendations of the CIC in that regard. The largest item proposed for funding with free cash next year is the $3.2 million for a public safety radio system upgrade, which is sorely needed. And the 5-year capital plan was included with the memo. So as the budget review progresses, we'll continue to monitor and report on the refinement of any of our estimates, and including the amount of coming in from the new meals tax. And I'd like to thank town staff, department heads, and town boards for their collaborative effort and continued support in bringing these materials to this point. And the one town, one solution approach will continue to guide the ongoing dialogue involving town residents for the further refinement of the budget leading up to the town meeting. So thank you.
Anyone have any questions? Comments?
Well, you've shrunk the deficit since our last meeting, so that's good. We're heading in the right direction. It's to start. So do we even have an estimate about what free cash is going to look like when it's certified? I know you said you're looking soon.
Yeah, it's probably going to end up between 8 and 10 million.
It's a healthy number, but it's one time, right? Because of the overlay.
Yeah, that's not going to happen again, but thank God it's over.
But yeah.
The capital projects that are approved by CIC total 6.5 million.
Already, okay.
So that would leave 3.5. But then do you
And
have?
that does not include the playground.
I see. And do you have, so 6.5 there, and then 875 and 700 for OPEB and reserve, right? So that leaves about 1.5 or so.
Maybe.
Maybe, okay. And it doesn't include the alternate options, which is adding the 500,000 that's listed here, right? So that, hypothetically, that brings it down to 1 million, even further down.
1.4, right?
Correct.
1 million left out here. So one couple of things. First of all, thank you, Elaine, and thanks to the, and Kaya and all the town departments. I know it must have been very hard to give away or give back this 1.7 as a scenario, cutting, or bringing it down on all fronts. But altogether, still, I saw somewhere the overall town's increase is 7% and schools 6.4%.
Town is 3.34.
3.3, okay. You had it somewhere, but,
That was the original request that we received.
oh, I see. So after this
After the change.
exercise, it's now 3.3?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So, yeah, that's pretty hard, I'm sure. Just one other thought. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I hope it's not a peanut butter spread, because the vaccination is one that stood out for me that I did not want to see cut. I know it's hard because of our elderly and our health, public health risks that it brings. So that's, I don't know how much amount, it's probably not a big amount, but it adds up, I get that. So that's one that kind of stood out on mine. And I was also attending the library budget discussions. And one thing I noticed there is that their budget is, as it is, pretty small. And cutting another 20,000 or 30,000 is going to hurt quite a few programs. So I don't know if that eventually happened or not. So because it's a small budget, I hope, I mean, again, it's up to you and all of the leaders of the town management that not have a, peanut butter, but depending on the size of the individual department budgets, also looking at the impact. I'm sure you're going through all of that. So those are some of the thoughts that I have. But even though it's one time, I think as much as we can take support from the free cash, that's probably what we have to do to some extent. And if there is any other option that we can hear from the school, I know they had a task to also look at some of that. I don't know if there was any feedback from that. Again, it's hard given what we have seen. And see how we can all make it work together.
So it sounds like, so we're still waiting on some numbers, the free cash to be certified, the state aid number, and negotiating for healthcare premiums, right? You're working on that, okay.
The governor's budget is due out tomorrow.
Okay.
Budget, so we should have some indication tomorrow.
So at our next meeting, we'll have more info, okay. And Lane, when you mentioned, it's on page 2 and 3, the deep cuts, those are things you ended up not cutting, correct?
That's correct.
For now, but
We did not.
But we could if we had to. It doesn't look like anything there really. But I know these are small things, but the holiday lights on the common, it seems like maybe we could get a donor that might be interested in doing that. But that's just a really drop in the bucket anyway. Yeah. We definitely want you to have up-to-date payroll systems, given all the data breaches that we see now. So I wouldn't want you to have to cut that. Let's see. And then... All right, so the ones that you proposed for the certified free cash totaling 500,000, that seems reasonable to me. That would help us meet our gap. And then, so if we're expecting around 8 to 10 million in free cash, and CIC has only approved 6.5 million in projects, what happens, so if we don't spend all that free cash, which I know we don't know the exact number yet, what happens to it? Does it roll over to the following year? Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I don't think I have any other questions. I'm trying to remain hopeful that we will be able to get most of the things that the department needs. Yeah. So that's all I have.
Good.
Go ahead, I had one. Where's it?
So going back to the 6.5, so CIC recommended that. I see the list of capitals. That was also separate from the 500K that you recommended, right? So we're already kind of at 7 in reality. On the list of capital projects, there was like 4 in red at the bottom. It looks like those were, like CIC didn't recommend those. Did the town manager's office approve all the other ones that were in white? Like what's the recommendation from both the CFO and the town manager?
I concur with CIC's recommendations.
Okay. You do?
They attended most of the meetings, and they had good reasons for making those choices. They were difficult choices.
Okay, I'm good for now, thank you.
Sorry, I just noticed this one. Can you discuss the roadway improvement, DeCarlo, Barbara, and Peppercorn? I know we tried to vote on that last year too, and I think it didn't pass. But what's the reason for not recommending it? Like the roads are in really, really bad condition.
They felt that it could be part of the paving management program that's included in the operating budget, and given the constraints that we have on capital projects, they figure that given everything else, it just wasn't top of their priority list.
Okay.
Through the chair, what's the plan for the wireless, the dispatcher communication system? I didn't fully follow. Is that coming next year or?
So Go ahead.
Sorry, it is part of the 6.5 million approved by CIC. It has been deferred for the past 3 years, so it really needs to be replaced. So that was one of their top priorities for '26.
Totally, I fully support that. It was deferred 3 years, but it's almost 25-year-old system. So it is dire time. Totally agree. One thing I also wanted to reflect is that we have reserved cash for a reason, right? For the rainy day. And as much as I would love to save more, I'm just hypothetically saying, what is the risk of using our free cash? Because that's not supposed to be a reserve, right? It's always something that we have managed well on our budget, or we have unspent for the most part. And in this case, Eversource, our previously, deserved tax, we are just getting it late. But say, with all these scenarios, and also allocating money for the playground, we make it all happen. What is the concern? And I know, again, in an ideal world, I would love to see more savings, but what is the, downfall for that?
The first item that you need to consider is the balance in your stabilization fund. So does your stabilization fund equate to 5% of your operating budget? If it doesn't, free cash needs to make up that deficit. So that would be one thing that you look at. And then spending free cash just deletes options or limits options for next year.
Understood.
Right, we also won't have that available next year, and then that gap gets even bigger.
Understood, yeah.
You can't sustain it.
And if you look at the forecast, the 5-year forecast that's included in there, we may need free cash.
Yep, and that's something, I've been voicing for quite some time, and we need the economic development or other revenue sources. So we'll get to those, of course, and it's dire that we really drive those. But again, coming back to that, you mentioned 5%. What is our current percentage going to be with this allocation for this year?
I don't have the number off the top of my head. I think we were at 6.5 million, and then we'll add another 700,000, so 7.2. But I haven't done the 5%.
Yeah. So that would be a good data point. I do hope that, we are around 5.5 or 6, which is, more is always good, but it means we are managing our risks. And as for next year, again, the other kind of lens is that free cash is because we didn't spend those in the town budgets where we anticipated those. I always debate, is it a good thing? Because that means we starved some services, and that's why it comes back the next year. So it's kind of a catch-22 game if you think about it. Every time if we want to save too much on the free cash, it's going to bite us because someone didn't get to use the money or didn't get the money because of not fully appropriate allocation of some kind. And that's why they're asking for it again this year. So I think that loop is something to think about. I would rather have 1 to 2 million free cash and then fully fund the services that we need now. So something to, I know it's always unpredictable in some ways, but something to think about and how we can tune that better.
So over the next month, the departments will be coming to talk to you about their budget proposals, and you can get into depth with these questions for each of their budgets.
Yeah, and just to resonate everyone's thought, I think we definitely are not in favor of looking at the override option. That is not an option right now, at least I heard my colleagues, and I wouldn't have on the table.
Well, I mean, this is the year. I really think we do need 5 to 6% in the stabilization because we know we're not getting the Eversource money next year. That's $4 million we're not going to get, and we know that now, so, you know, we should be prepared. It's a very difficult situation. And I see some of these things that have been suggested that we may cut back or eliminate, and we really have to look at them. And as much as we don't want to say yes to any of them, we have to look at them. I mean, you know, one of them with the holiday lights on the common, they were gorgeous this year. But can we afford it next year? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to cut Parks and Rec programs. I don't stormwater program.
Or Family Day.
Huh?
Or Family Day.
Family Day. That's a lot of money for Family Day. I don't know if it can be raised
Wait, do we fund Family Day?
in another way, huh?
I thought that was privately funded Family Day. Is it on there?
It is privately funded. Apparently, there are some expenses that the town has paid for as needed.
Okay,
But I don't think the full 30,000 has ever been spent.
okay.
And like you said, the vaccine services, I hate to see it all cut out, but if you had to limit it to, you know, people over 65 or something like that, perhaps we could take a look at. I mean, you just don't want to see any of them reduced or eliminated. I mean, close Sandy Beach. That was a real resource for me when my kids were little. I hate to think of closing Sandy Beach. But I know it's expensive. Lifeguards and beach operations are expensive.
Just want to be clear, we haven't proposed closing the beach. We haven't proposed closing the beach. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, well, I'm just reading from
And not,
suggestions here,
and not reducing library hours, right?
No.
Although that, right, okay. For the stabilization, though, because we do want to get that to the 5% or whatever is recommended, could we get an update on how much is in there currently? Because I think the last few years we have been adding, you know, a good amount, so.
I have it on my list.
Okay, thanks. For next time, maybe.
I mean, and that number is important for our bond rating as well, when we
Yeah.
keep growing, so.
So I'm glad that this budget does include continuing to put more into that. 'Cause I know it's hard to, you know, we're saving for a rainy day, and it's hard to know when that day is going to come, but it feels like it's going to come soon because, you know.
Good to move on, Mary Jo?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good work.
And if, I know nobody wants an override, but if we were to have to propose that wouldn't need to be a warrant article, it just have to be on the ballot? Is that correct? So it doesn't have to be decided right now?
Okay, now we're going to move on to the permission for a bonfire.
What's up, Chief?
Hello. Hi, Chief. Good evening, ladies.
Hello.
And what would you like to present tonight?
I'm going to present.
Good evening. My name is Gail Ober, and this is Kim Cooper. We are the class parents of the 2026 graduating class. We appreciate being here tonight. We've also asked Chief Gary Doherty from the Hopkinton Fire Department and Tim Pearson, Director of Buildings and Grounds for Hopkinton Public Schools, to be here with us. Unfortunately, Tim couldn't come at the last minute, but we want to thank both of them very much for their support. Historically, there has always been a post-prom event. This is an activity after prom to keep our kids safe. In the last few years, the attendance for post-prom has continued to decline. The students that we want to attend our post-prom event have no interest in attending. This year, we sent out a survey to both the junior class students and parents. the consensus was that not a lot of people were interested in a post-prom event. They wanted to have a class event at another time. Kim and I, mostly Kim, came up with a very creative idea that has been done in Hopkinton in the past, but it has not been done in a while. It's an event that would bond this class as they prepare for their senior year. We are asking permission from the Select Board to approve a permit for the fire department so the parents of the class of 2026 can host a bonfire event on Friday evening, June 13th. They had it wrong on the agenda, just so you know. Friday evening, June 13th, 2025, from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. This would take place behind Hopkinton Middle School on the clay part of the field 2. We have the support of Chief Doherty and Tim Pearson if the wood we provide is untreated and completely clean of foreign objects. We would have a DJ and 2 food trucks, and we have already checked with the Board of Health, and they are both the food trucks that we would like to have there are already approved for permits. We would also provide sport activities for the students, such as cornhole, volleyball, and softball, and there would be lights on the field, and the students will be able to use the Brown Gym bathrooms. Chief Doherty forwarded us the Massachusetts general law regarding ceremonial bonfires, which you all have in front of you. Something important to note, we have talked to both Chief Doherty and Tim Pearson and discussed if there was a water restriction due to a drought like last year, we would not have the bonfire. We would still have the DJ, the food trucks, and the sporting activities. We are also working on an alternative date for a rain date, if it rains. We have discussed this with Mr. Bishop and Matt Santoro, School Resource Officer. They are both on board, providing we get the permit. Thank you in advance for your consideration of our request for a permit for this exciting activity for the class of 2026.
Okay, any comments or questions?
Just in general, again, sounds like a fun event and great community gathering, and especially for kids, high school kids. So I'm supportive of it. I want to make sure safety and other measure-wise how we are thinking and what's the plan. And great that Gary is here. If you want to walk us through that.
Tonight, we're just here really to get your approval. Once that happens, then we can move forward with the planning. Like Gail and Kim were saying, the MGL says you have to give us the authority to have this bonfire. We're only allowed to do one a year. Once we do that, we'll find, they already have the location picked out. They'll have to provide the wood, and then we can actually talk about the size. Some of the other things we're worried about that time of year is red flag. Like if we're in the drought again, we can't have it, depending on bird season and some EPA requirements. But once, this is the first step. Once the first step is approved, then we can move along, developing a safety plan and stuff.
Thank you. And in general, you feel this is manageable and something our fire department can rate?
Especially in that location, it's down in the back. There's not, there won't be any structures around or anything. We will be providing a fire truck for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think as long as the fire chief's conditions are included, I think we should approve the event.
So if I may, through the chair, Tim Pearson was not able to be here tonight. I think in the schools, we just had some confusion as to who the sponsors of this was. First, we thought it was the HPTO, but now I realize it's a parent organization. So I spoke with Mr. Bishop. He said that what is typical is that the high school administration will, pop into an event like this post-prom, but they typically are not there for the entire evening. So as long as we're clear that it's a parent-generated event, then I think the schools are very comfortable with you using the space. Yep.
And we asked Matt, too. We asked Matt to be there for the event, and would obviously have whatever we needed in terms of that support.
Matt said he would be there for us. And it will be funded by us doing fundraising through the parents of the class.
And just to add that we are checking to make sure the town's insurance would cover such an event, and if not, some additional insurance may be required.
Okay.
Well, I love the idea. Having gone to high school in the 60s, every year, we had a huge bonfire. It was around Thanksgiving time and not this time of year, but
One in the 80s and
it was huge.
That's what you remember.
We had a great time. It was safe, and none of us, I don't think, ever forgot it. It just meant a lot. So it was one of our biggest events. In fact, it might have been the biggest event of the year. I think it's a great idea. And as long as the chief is on board and organizing, I would think this is great. So, anybody else got any comments? Okay. I will make a motion to authorize the fire department to issue a permit for the commercial ceremonial bonfire on June 13th, 2025, with the following conditions. The fire department will require a brush truck to be on standby during the event. A drought or red flag conditions exist, the event may not proceed, and a food truck may be required for inspection by the fire department.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Have a great time.
Thank you.
Grab some water.
Okay. Okay, we have a town position to, we need food service worker at the senior center. Now, this job is already, did someone leave or something happen, or is this a new position?
So this is a position at the senior center where someone left.
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
Someone recently left.
Someone recently left, so it's budgeted. It's a budgeted position. Okay. Any questions? Any?
I think it's pretty straightforward to me. Thank you.
We get Joe when he gets back. I move to authorize the posting of a food service worker position at the senior center.
So moved.
Well, I usually abstain for these votes. I think it's micromanagement, so you could wait till Joe gets back. I mean,
Amy usually abstains from this.
Okay.
if you really need my vote, I'll vote yes, because I think we need this position. But
We can wait.
Well, then we'll go to start the town manager's report.
yeah, let's do that.
Yep, so the first item in the town manager report is just an update on the Main Street Corridor project. The last property and traffic control cabinet cutover work for Eversource was scheduled for this past week. And all will be on the new underground infrastructure once this work is complete. Comcast and Verizon are working to complete their designs to cut over to the new underground infrastructure. Comcast intends to begin pulling wires at the end of January. And there's an update attached to my town manager report. The second item is the town department position vacancy that you already mentioned. Third, just announcing again that there's a new means-tested senior property tax exemption for school building projects, which was the result of a town proposal which was approved by the legislature, and that will be available starting in fiscal year 2026, and the Board of Assessors will administer the program and determine the exemption amounts annually. And so they'll be putting out information on that new program.
It's really excellent that it's finally gone through. Yeah, good job, everybody working on that.
And wanted to mention, too, that there is a proposed use of the Team Hoyt statue for a fundraiser. Team Hoyt has reached out regarding a fundraising event on March 20th, where Bank of America would like to include this in a regional event, where they'll have some marathon bibs put on the statue and a QR code and a sandwich board up for the day, which is Giving Day. They'll also be using some statues around Boston for this same purpose, and they'll provide security to monitor the statue and display for the day. And at this time, it doesn't appear as though any permits or licenses are required, and there'll be no blocking of roads or anything like that.
They're going to do it on premise, right? They're not going to move it.
No. It'll be like pictures and things like that, right?
Right, and people will go to the statue and use the QR code
Nice. Yeah.
to donate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Seems like a great, fun idea, but does that mean since no permits or licenses required, can any charity just do this?
Well, they're using town property, so we appreciate asking for just the use of the property, make sure nothing else is scheduled and so forth. And that we don't need other things there like portable toilets or public safety, anything like that.
Okay.
Okay, liaison reports. Anybody have one?
The Chinese American Association is having their, or the Hopkinton Chinese American Association is having their Lunar New Year celebration this weekend. I think it's Saturday.
This Saturday.
Saturday evening, yep. So that's nice.
It's a wonderful event, right?
What is it?
It's a New Year, Chinese New Year celebration.
Oh, New Year, okay, yeah.
And
Okay, Joe, you're back.
Sorry.
So, no, that's okay. I moved to authorize the posting of a food service worker position for the senior center. It's not a new position. Someone recently left, so it's budgeted.
Support that.
so move.
Town manager supports.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
Aye.
Okay, and we went through the town manager's report. Elaine just gave that. And liaison reports. Do you have a liaison report?
I attended the library meeting, and there were, concerns about the budget and how it's going to be managed. So that's where I made the earlier comment on budget as well. And then they are, I think the vice chair sent a note that they also discussed about a possible warrant for the reporting structure of the unit. I don't know if there was any follow-up or is that still being considered, but there was one that I also heard from them. And then on affordable housing, I think they're meeting tonight, so we'll have some more update, but about the expiring deed restrictions and how we can manage on some of the ones that are expiring, because we are already at 10%, which is the threshold from a zoning perspective. If we go lower, it'll be a free zoning essentially. So they're working on renewing those on a timely basis so we can meet up to that. But there's more to it, and one of the upcoming sessions, I think we would like to have them join us. That's all I have.
Amy?
The only thing I'll mention, I think, so there's a Bobby Gibbs statue that's the idea is that it's going to be placed near the common, but it's been at the HCA during all the construction. But I was going to say the Historic District Commission has been reviewing that, and they're hoping to get it on the common before Marathon this year. So that would be nice if the project is finally done.
Yeah.
But it was a really nice design to have the Bobby Gibbs statue, and it has a little, like a half-circle wall where people could sit next to the statue and see it.
I thought it was, I'm sorry, I was told it was going on the brick house.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Across from the common.
Near the
It's
common,
going to have a platform and everything.
Yes, it's not
And
actually on
it'll
the
be
common.
balanced with the Hoyt statue being on either side, so.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, that's all. I just thought maybe I heard wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I have right now.
It'll be nice to have that done. Joe?
I'm good right now.
Okay. I did talk to Dottie Ferreter on the Marathon Committee, and they're moving right along, and there was really not much new. She did say they were hoping and planning to have the Saturday events that we had last year with the children's race, and that was very popular, and it was a really nice deal that they had there, so we're hoping to do that. They're hoping to do that again this year, so I think that's great to have the use of the common for Saturday on the weekend. The other things, okay, I did go to the MWRTA meeting, and they're just steaming right along. So that was a good meeting. And that's all I have to say. Anybody else? Okay, so future board agenda items, I did want to talk about Brian's item, the senior tax credit hours, because it was because of the seniors. We can't use the work-off program for a certain amount of the seniors that are doing work at the senior center. Like in the gift shop, it's not part of the criteria for that, but we did for a little while. So now we have to, we really got to look into a way of giving them some kind of the same compensation that the state or that we give the other people who work and donate time to the senior center. And I think we're going to have to do it ourselves.
I was thinking that
We're
had
going
been
to have
resolved
to do
now.
it, you know, in a different way.
We have it as open, but I thought it had been resolved. No, it's not been resolved yet?
No.
So Senior Services has created or, looked for other opportunities for people to do the activities that they need to do. And as far as I know, there's, been opportunities for everyone who wants to do something, but they have to perform work for the town and not for a nonprofit organization.
So it's not the regular work-off program.
Correct. Well, it is the work-off program, but they have to work for the town and not for a nonprofit.
For the town and not for the senior center. Okay.
Tax benefit comes from the town.
That works for me. So that basically is done. That's taken care of. Can we take that off that list? The future things?
Would you say it's?
I thought there was still an interest in talking about it,
Oh,
though,
learning about it more, okay.
but it's up to the board.
Okay.
It was his item.
Well, I just want to make sure the seniors get their due. They work hard, and I've worked there myself, so. Okay, now I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So,
No, to executive session.
Oh, we have executive, so
Oh, adjourn to executive session, I should say. Not to return
yeah.
to this session.
The
We
select
have to
board
read
will-
all the items.
the select board will convene in executive session. I moved select board will convene in executive session, update and strategy session regarding arbitration filed by.
there is
former sergeant.
there's a motion that does not have first.
Have all that? Okay.
So I would use the,
Do you have the motion?
Oh, yeah, right here. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, making it up.
I hope people don't realize it's not that I can't read, it's just that in March I'm having cataracts removed from both eyes. So everything is blurry. Takes me a little longer than somebody else.
I move to convene in executive session pursuant to MGL C30A, 21A, purpose 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, land at Assessor's Map R12-10-0, R240, and R16-19-0, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board. Pursuant to MGL C30A, 21A, purpose 3, to consider strategy with respect to negotiations with the police, fire, DPW, and dispatch unions. Approval of executive session minutes to allow Elaine Lazarus and Lance Del Prior to participate in executive session, not to convene in open session after the conclusion of the executive session.
Second.
Second.
Amy Ritterbush, yes?
Joe Clark, yes?
Shahidul Manan, yes?
Mary Jo Lefreniere, yes?